History is full of singular events that caused a chain reaction, changing the course of history forever after. Franz Ferdinand's driver taking a wrong turn, Czech Protestants throwing Catholic regents out of a window, the Roman Senate deciding to invent Caesar salad, just to name a few eurocentric ones. You could even argue all of history is just cause and effect, although I personally would argue that the most important factor are the material conditions behind these events in society at the time at large. But what about events that changed world history you never heard about? What if one tiny accident rewrote Europe's fate? What about a shipwreck that sparked 1,000 years of a Franco-English rivalry? Or a bomb that birthed America's Red Scare? Here are 3 jaw-dropping events you've definitely never heard of. Number 1. The White Ship Disaster. The year is 1120. England is under the control of the Normans, which is why travel between Normandy and England is quite common. Henry I, King of England, his own legitimate son and heir, William Adelin, 4 of his many illegitimate children, including 3 sons and many English nobles, were arriving in Normandy. They had to return to England when a certain Thomas Fitzstephen offered the king to ferry him across the channel in the newly refitted vessel, the White Ship. His father, Stephen Fitz-Edward, was the captain of the Mora, William the Conqueror's largest flagship, so he seemed like a reputable captain. While King Henry already had other arrangements, he hired the man to transport pretty much everyone besides himself, including his heir and his illegitimate children. I think you can guess what happened to the White Ship. Correct, it sank. No, the crashing was entirely avoidable. The crew asked King Henry for wine, and he, being a trendsetter that knew drunk driving would be a big meme one day, delivered them the wine. So yeah, the crew was drunk, which made some people leave the ship. Like a certain Stephen of Blois, very wise choice. The sinking of the ship resulted in much of the English nobility dying and King Henry not having a legitimate male heir. Although he had one more legitimate child, his daughter and the Holy Roman Empress Matilda. But this was a very patriarchal society, so she was a controversial heir. When King Henry died in 1135, 15 years after the White Ship disaster, a succession crisis broke out known as the Anarchy. During it, many villages questioned the authority of the king, declaring themselves to be anarcho-syndicalist communes. Okay, not that, but it was a massive civil war, changing English history and with that, European and world history forever. Henry wanted his daughter to succeed him, and before his death convinced some of the nobility to support her. However, his nephew, a certain Stephen of Blois, remember him, claimed the throne and crowned himself king. Long story very short, Matilda managed to come out on top after 15 absolutely devastating years of fighting filled with back and forths. Her son Henry Plantagenet, brother of the famous Richard the Lionheart, became King Henry II, the first Angevin king of England. He held many French territories, which are known as the Angevin Empire. Despite being a vassal of the French king when it came to his French possessions, he resisted the French king Louis VII, worsening the Anglo-French rivalry that changed European and world history forever. If it hadn't been for the White Ship disaster, we would certainly live in a very different world. One where the Anglo-French rivalry might have ended far sooner, which might have led to a butterfly effect where Canada wouldn't be a thing. Oh, how beautiful that world would be. What does this story teach us? Always hire experienced captains and seekers if you don't want this to happen to you. Also, always have a backup heir. The Haymarket Affair. The USA is famous for its hatred of anything even remotely socialist. Universal healthcare? That's communism. Democracies that resist American companies trying to own the country? Communism. A neoliberal politician instead of a neoconservative or fascist?
Comrade Kamala Harris. She's a Marxist, communist, fascist, socialist.
Socialist and also a Nazi. Where does this hatred for anything even remotely socialist come from? Well, it is a complex and long history of successful propaganda to stop workers from developing class consciousness, an event that majorly contributed to the future Red Scare was the Haymarket Affair of 1886. The US in 1886. The 8-hour workday was not yet a reality, but the predecessor of the American Federation of Labor, known as the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, had demanded it for a while. Specifically, during the summer of 1884, it decided that it wanted to start a nationwide movement for the 8-hour workday, and achieving the 8-hour workday on May 1st, 1886, Labor Day. In Illinois, the 8-hour workday for workers and federal employees had already been the law since 1867, but it had not been enforced. Instead of 8 hours, the average worker in Chicago, Illinois' largest city and an important industrial center, had worked 60 hours over 6 days, so it's a 10-hour workday. That's almost as much time as your average Paradox player invests into Paradox games. Many of the workers in Chicago at the time had been German and Irish immigrants, but this was before the Gestapo, ICE was founded, so despite the sizable anarchist movement in the city mostly being made up of Germans, they couldn't be wound up and sent to El Salvador without a trial. Luckily for the American bourgeoisie, they would soon get an excuse to unlawfully imprison 8 anarchists, 4 of which were executed and 1 of which committed suicide. Beginning on May 1st, thousands of workers went on strike, singing songs about the 8-hour workday with slogans such as 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for gooning. I mean what we will. And shortening the hours increased the pay. All was going well and peacefully until on May 3rd, some workers confronted strikebreakers on the west side of Chicago. The police protected these strikebreakers by opening fire on the striking workers, killing one and injuring several others. Out of protest against police brutality, the anarchist labor leaders called for a mass meeting in Haymarket Square the next day, which even the mayor of Chicago, who attended as an observer, said was peaceful. However, after he and many of the protesters departed, 176 policemen arrived to attack the remaining 200 protesters. Then someone unknown threw a bomb at the police, to which the police responded with random gunfire. 4 to 8 protesters were killed by the police, while 30 to 40 were injured. As for the police, 7 died, 1 of which from the bomb, and 60 were wounded. Most of the police was injured and killed by gunfire, so friendly fire is a possibility, especially considering most if not all of the strikers were unarmed and it was quite dark around this time. Following this, in Chicago the police unlawfully raided many homes of labor leaders without any warrants. In the end, 8 anarchists who had nothing to do with the bomb were wrongfully convicted in a biased trial. Most of the so-called Chicago 8 weren't even present during the Haymarket protest, let alone during the time of the bombing. 4 were executed, including the organizer of the protest in Chicago. 1 committed suicide, 3 languished in prison until being pardoned in June 1893 by Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld, who condemned the justice system for allowing such injustice. This injustice led to a crackdown on unions in the US, with the largest union, the Knights of Labor, being disbanded. It also contributed to anti-union and anti-anarchist hysteria and laid the groundwork for the Red Scare. But also the US being a land of freedom for companies. Before we wrap up, can you guess which empire almost vanished in a single battle? The narrow failure of the Crusade of Varna. The Crusade of Varna is kind of known. For the ones unaware, it happened from 1443 to 1444 and was the last-ditch attempt by a huge coalition to halt the Ottoman expansion into the Balkans and Central Europe. The most important members of the coalition were Hungary and Poland. The latter one is crucial for the narrow failure. After already concluding peace, the Crusaders kept attacking the Ottomans anyway. A final battle would decide the fate of the Crusade, the Battle of Varna, hence the name. During the battle, the barely 20-year-old Polish king Władysław III had the reckless idea of charging with 500 of his knights into the Ottoman center to overwhelm them and capture the Ottoman Sultan Murad II. Sounds about as smart as consuming spoiled milk from a dead sheep's stomach. But just like the invention of cheese, it worked. That was until the king of Poland's horse tripped right in front of the sultan's tent, either being stabbed or falling into a trap. Thus the plan narrowly failed and the king was killed. The rest of the Crusade army fled due to the huge moral loss of Władysław's death. The Battle of Varna was an Ottoman victory, despite major losses. The Ottoman Empire would further expand into the Balkans and Central Europe, making it all the way to the gates of Vienna, resulting in the invention of croissants. He would only be kicked out of the Balkans except for Eastern Thrace in 1913. During the First Balkan War. To summarize, the Anglo-French rivalry was greatly strengthened by one disaster and its consequences. American hatred for anything socialist is due to a terror attack in response to anti-labor police brutality, and the Ottoman Empire might have been a lot less powerful if it weren't for one horse being killed a few seconds too early. Now, how many of these events did you know? Comment your score, or if you want to see a part 2. Subscribe to not miss it. There are many events that changed the world forever but were forgotten. If you're interested in forgotten stuff, how about checking out this video about forgotten countries? I guarantee you haven't heard of any of them. I mean, did you know a British pickle manufacturer almost became the king of East Turkestan? Aight, until the next one.